Hi, can you all hear me? I'm not very loud. Can you guys hear me at the back? Okay, great. I feel very flattered to be invited here to talk to you all. Thank you very much for giving me your time. When I was asked, I didn't know much about SIFE. I learned a lot just today and from what I was sent in my reading, but the energy wasn't captured in any emails. Also, when I was asked to come and talk, I thought, okay, I do a lot of public speaking, and I thought, sounds like a great initiative, and I started making notes, thinking it was like an hour's talk, and then I was told, no, it's got to be 10 minutes. And that's when it became a real challenge. And it's that is the real crunch for all entrepreneurs, is keeping things simple. It's really easy to make businesses complicated and to create big structures. It's like that old saying goes, I'd send you a short email, but I don't have time. It's very easy to send long-winded emails, but it's not easy to get to the point. And simplifying processes, simplifying businesses actually requires a lot more effort than making them complicated. So with that disclaimer, I thought what I'd come and do is tell you guys some stories for 10 minutes, because to tell a 1 hour speech was not on. And I really hope that we can have some fun for the next 10 minutes. So, when we were in school, we were all taught that the world is made up of atoms. And I don't know, I've always challenged that. I've never even seen an atom. Maybe somebody made up that story. Maybe somebody made up that story about the atom. As far as I'm concerned, the world is made up of stories. And I've never found more colorful, more entertaining, more painful, more beautiful stories than from entrepreneurs. And what I did is for the last month, I've been thinking and thinking. There's so many, I could keep here all day, as I'm sure a lot of you can as well. Entrepreneurs have so many stories, good stories, bad stories, exciting stories, like movies. And every movie that we've done, the last one about Riyad Musa material, that is an entrepreneurial case study of note. So what I thought I'd do is just share with you some stories and hopefully inspire you in some way. So I've always, been working ever since I can remember. I was working in the Hyper Armor from age 16. I was working as a waiter. I worked as a waiter for 7 years. I used to work in the flea market. And one of my first entrepreneurial exploits was when I was about 20 years old, and my brother Alon and my old friend and partner, Dave Frankel, we were working when there was only one flea market, in the flea market I was selling ties and T-shirts, and Dave and my brother were selling these spray paint aerosols. And it was a winter's morning, it was cold like this winter, and a very official lady came past like with a clipboard. She came past with a clipboard and she was looking at all of us, and she came up to Dave and she looked at the aerosols and she said to him, my young man, and she had the clipboard and she was making some notes. She said, my young man, do your aerosols have CFCs? And we didn't know what she was talking about. So Dave looked, he was 17 years old. He was driving my mother's like Mazda 323 without a license. We were packing this thing in on a Saturday morning, off went to the flea market. We were making a few $100 on a Saturday. This is 20 odd years ago. And this lady says to Dave, does your aerosols have CFCs? So Dave leans very close to this lady and says, lady, we are the market leader. He said, and like she was scribbling frantically. He says, nobody. He didn't stop there. He says, no one has more CFCs than us. No, he didn't stop. It was on a roll. He says, lady, I challenge you to find anyone with more CFCs. We've been sitting with this warehouse of these aerosols since 1986. If anybody wants them for $50, we couldn't sell one after that speech. But that was one of our first like entrepreneurial and adventures. It was a story that we'll never forget, and it was very funny. When we were building IS, and my colleague Derek and I are old friends, we all go way back. When we were building IS, there were a few of us in a room in Randburg in a small office. We used to phone and tell people, I'm phoning from Internet Solutions from the Joburg office. It's not a lie. We didn't have any other offices, but it sounded like a great thing to say to people. It certainly sounded like we were big, we knew what we were doing. And when we phoned to say, I'm phoning you from our Joburg offices, can we come and see you? And those are the kind of stories we've collected. And I'm sure the entrepreneurs in the front row and the future entrepreneurs, after a decade or two in business, you're going to have a collection of stories. So I actually detailed a whole bunch of things around stories, selling stories, stories around innovation, and I'll quickly run through them, and I think they'll be a lot of fun. So I had a great experience in 1995. Jeremy Ord, our partner from Dimension Data, phoned me up and said, if those of you know Jeremy, he says, China, we've got to go to Edgardale to do to do a presentation. The board of directors have invited us. They've got their lunch. I don't know much about it, and we were partners with Dimension Data. We're partners with Dimension Data. He said, I'll pick you up, jump in the car, and we'll go and give a talk to the board of Edwards. I said, great. That's a big business. We were 3 years into our journey, and what a great company to go and present to. What an opportunity. So I jump in Jeremy's Mercedes, and off we go to Edgar's, and there's about 10 guys around the room. If anybody had any dealings then with Edgar's, there was a guy called Mr. Don Etheridge. He was the chairman at the time, or the MD. It was quite confusing because when you got into the room, they were a very stiff bunch of people. And we were introduced, me and Jeremy, to Mr. Chairman, Mr. FD, Mr. Marketing Director. It was very confusing. We're quite a relaxed bunch, and I don't know, I almost called the guy Mr. Belvedere. I got quite confused. And we sat down there, and Jeremy said, well, thanks for the opportunity. They were having lunch, and if anybody's ever done public speaking, talking to people while they're eating is never an easy thing. There's always noise. And they only had about 45 minutes. And you could see that it wasn't an easy bunch of people. They were quite serious. And Mr. Etheridge had like a big cigar, like he didn't light it. Like he was like quite an authoritative guy. And Jeremy stood up and said, thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to hand over to Ronnie. He's the internet specialist, and he'll tell you about it. And I could see that they were not interested. Mr. Etheridge, I think I called him Lord. They were very serious, or God or something, but he was not interested. He was fidgeting. And after about a minute of talking, I said, but sir, Lord, I said, how we see the internet isn't important. How do you see the world of fashion and technology coming together? And he stood up and he said, how do I see it? He said, that's a good question. And then he spoke for an hour. And at the end of it, he said to Jeremy, that's the best presentation I've ever been to. So, this is a true story. And I learned that selling, I've always known this. I learned that selling is really more about listening than anything else. And all entrepreneurs in this room have ever had to pitch and sell. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not giving you a message, you mustn't talk. But if you're trying to get a girl into bed, as my dad keeps telling me, or if you're trying to sell something, you need to be quiet, So, and being a good listener is not okay, there we go. I like the energy in this, and I see we've opened the door there, but you must be getting laid silly. Okay, I like that, okay. But selling is so much more about listening than about talking. And any entrepreneur will tell you that often we get into scenarios where the people we're pitching to do all the talking, and yet we get told like it was a great presentation. What was I doing in that presentation? I was sitting there writing down everything that this man said. He was the head of the business. I wrote it all down. We went back to the office. 2 days later, we sent him a proposal, and we got a very complimentary letter to say that presentation was great. They're still talking about it. I don't know. I thought I was in candid camera. I didn't say a word. And they were really impressed with us at IS and at DD that how come we knew so much about their business. I thought I was in candid camera. The head of the company has been telling us for an hour about their vision for fashion and online, and it was a lesson that I've never forgotten. The other thing about entrepreneurs is that they all need to be armed with a healthy dose of chutzpah. I assume a lot of you don't know what the word chutzpah is. It's when you are confident and cheeky, but in a nice way. You're not breaking the law, you're not doing anything arrogant, you're not doing anything that's bad, but you're quite cheeky. You push the envelope in a nice way. And there's always great stories to describe chutzpah. And the one that I never forget is an old story that I'm sure my great-grandfather told, and my father one day told me, about A.B. Cohen, who was walking his Chihuahua in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, the suburb outside Manhattan. And he was walking the Chihuahua on a Friday night past a synagogue. And he remembered in that synagogue, they had a hell of a service on the Friday night, and they give you like a free meal and a glass of wine, Shabbos wine. And he thought, oh, it's Friday night, I'm going to go and have a meal, sing some songs, have a glass of wine. But he's got the Chihuahua. So what does he do? He walks in like this. He walks in like this, and the rabbi comes out and says, sir, what are you doing? He said, it's Friday night, I'm coming to join the service. He says, sir, you can't bring a dog in here. He said, that's not a dog. That's my guide dog, And the rabbi looks at him and says, but sir, it's a Chihuahua. He goes, they gave me a Chihuahua? So, And, if you guys are true entrepreneur hearts, if you guys are true entrepreneurs at hearts, which I'm sure you are, being part of an event like this and a program like this, you'll appreciate that story, because we all sometimes have to be a bit cheeky. We finished this film now, and we are busy waiting for all kinds of news from international film festivals, inspired by Riyad Musa, the doctor comedian. And Riyad and I met on the stage doing stand-up comedy about 12 years ago. And in the time I'd met him, he wasn't a doctor yet. He was going to hospitals, doing comedy magic. He was a magician, and he gave up the magic because it was haram, it wasn't kosher to make illusions, and he focused on comedy, which was challenging enough. And he used to go to hospitals and make a whole bunch of sick kids laugh. And it was a beautiful thing. And I used to go with him this is like over 10 years ago. And often he'd say, like, you know, I've got my nerdy computer friend here, Ronnie, and he's going to come and tell you a few jokes. And it was a lot of fun, and I used to try and make the sick kids laugh in the hospitals. But it all ended one day. It all ended. It was around the middle of July 2002. I remember we went to a hospital, and there were a bunch of sick kids there. And Riyad made them laugh, and he did some magic tricks, and it was great. And he said, I'm going to hand over to Ronnie. And I got up there, and I made a few jokes. And at the end of it, they laughed. And I said to all the sick kids, you know, I hope you guys all get better. And the one kid looked at me and said, we hope you get better. And you know, it was a very telling moment. You know, Riyad and I high-fived. And it was 10 years ago, actually around about now. It was 10 years ago to the month. That's when the seeds of that film were planted. I said to Riyad, you know, it's quite clear that, you know, that you'll be in front of the camera, and I'll be the entrepreneur behind the camera. And that's often about the life of entrepreneurs. This movie, you know, we did, I'm sure some of you have seen it or heard about it. Riyad Musa is now in a big international film. It's quite an extraordinary thing. There hasn't been any news in it because it's all hush-hush, but they're busy filming. And he's going to be a world star next year when it comes out. And, you know, people see movies and movie work, and they only see, like, the glamour of it. But behind the scenes, there's guys like me kissing a lot of ass, running around, doing all the crappiest work you can ever imagine. But at the end of the day, when we look at that product, we celebrate, like, South African talent, South African entrepreneurship, South African risk-taking, because the arts in particular, in terms of a business venture and entrepreneurial spirit, is highly, like, you know, the risks are so high. And we've actually done a wonderful job, and we're very, very chuffed about it. I thought I'd end off by, because I know time is limited, I thought I'd end off talking appropriately about some technology stories. And my friend Derek has had a story which has been with me. He used to tell it, and I stole it from him. It's always good to borrow, steal good entrepreneurial stories, as long as you use them and keep them alive. And I am giving credit. Because the technology field and the world of telecommunications is so rich in stories and litigation and all kinds of crazy stuff. But, you know, for example, if you haven't thought about it, the world of telecommunications has a short history, and we can trace it back for the last 100 years. Do you know what came first, for example? The telephone or the skyscraper? If you think about it, you might know the answer, but a lot of people have to think about it. And some people say the skyscraper, the answer is the telephone. And the reason the telephone came before the skyscraper is because without the telephone, who'd want to live or work in the 3rd, 4th, 10th, 50th story of a building? The telephone changed the way we lived and do things. It changed the way we meet people. It changed the way we do business. It changed the way entrepreneurs can now have global, like, organizations. The telephone liberated. It allowed us to live vertically. And the internet has taken that to another level. Now you can have these businesses that sell to people all over the planet and have a head office in one country but have customers in 100 other countries. It's quite extraordinary. But I remember when Derek and I were building ICE, you know, and still today, but a lot back in the 90s, we used to get blamed for everything. When somebody's husband or wife would leave them, we'd get blamed. You know, when someone's computer crashed, we get blamed. We're always getting blamed. And it reminded us, Derek told us once a story of the post office. Like, everybody always blames the post office. And it's just one of those things. There's a great old story about these guys in the post office. They get an envelope that's addressed to God. And they open the envelope, you know, because they don't know what to do with it. And they open the envelope, and this is a letter from Mrs. Matembu in a village, and it's this beautiful, heartfelt letter. How if she only got 1,000 rand, she could just make a new start in life and just get everything together and things will be better. And they were so touched by this letter that they had a collection plate and they raised 950 Rand. There was a return address. They put it in the envelope and they sent it back. And about a month later, they got another envelope addressed to God, and they opened it up, and it said, "Dear God, thank you for listening." And I almost got my life together. It was so close. I really needed 1,000 Rand, and if those bastards in the post office hadn't taken the other 50, and this is the thing, everybody, is always blaming the post office, and I can tell you for a large part of our journey building Internet Solutions, we got blamed for the most craziest stuff. But it was a lot of fun. It wasn't easy. I don't think the life of an entrepreneur is ever easy. And I don't think being obsessed and having ulcers and taking risks is ever something that's good for one's health. But the best entrepreneurs, I hope I'm not giving the wrong message, but the entrepreneurs that I've got to know are always obsessed and crazy. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful energy that infects all of us. And it's amazing when people create things and create things that last. To make money is not the same as to actually create a business, as you quoted from Mr. Henry Ford. And I thought I'd end off, talking about one of my favorite films, The Dead Poets Society. I'm sure some of you have seen that film. It's quite an old film now, but watch it again. There's some incredible entrepreneurial messages in that film, like as there are in many books and songs and movies. But there was a scene where Robin Williams gets all the kids together and a young Ethan Hawke stares at him and he says to this class, "Why do we read and write poetry?" And he says, "You think it's to woo women?" And he goes, "Wrong, thanks for playing." Remember, only Robin Williams can do. And he says, "We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we're members of the human race. And the human race is filled with passion," which I'm sure most of you here are. I'm sure all of you. He said the most profound thing. He says, business, medicine, law, engineering, they're all very noble professions, and they're necessary to sustain life. But poetry, art, love, romance, laughter, these are the things we stay alive for. And, if your business is only about making money, then it's a poor business. We don't stay alive. Nobody wakes up and goes, "I need more medicine," or "I hope the roof stays up," or "I hope my jacket's okay." We stay alive for inspiration, for we love good stories. We were taught in school that the world is made up of atoms. It's made up of stories. And I'm really hoping that I'll be invited back to this event, because I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I've never seen so many students in suits. It's if I was like you guys at that age, yes, I'd really be far in life. But I'm pretty sure that one day, maybe even next year, if I'm invited back, I hope I am, because now that I've been exposed, it's an extraordinary event, this. I'm sure you'll have your own collection of stories. Anyway, I should end off there. I actually got one of my things here, this jacket's full of funny stuff. I don't know if I can even get it out. But one of the things, it's in my pocket. Yeah, Riyad Musa, my magician comedian friend. He taught me that stand-up comedy, because I learned with a bunch of stand-up comics, with David Cow and John Flismus and Kakiso Ladiga and Riyad Musa and Brennan Jack for a long time. And they taught me that the best comedians are listening as much as they're talking. They are selling as much as they are talking. They have to watch the room. It's the most extraordinary thing. It's an incredible talent. Riyad Musa can watch the room, and if he doesn't make people laugh, because the deal of a stand-up comic is that they're the ultimate salesman. They have to close a deal every 15 seconds. If my job today was to come and be a stand-up comic, then I failed. Because a stand-up comic, if Bill Cosby was here or Jerry Seinfeld, they need to make you laugh every 15 seconds. And the best stand-up comics, they're watching, they're listening as much as they're talking. It's part of their selling. And if a joke isn't working, they change direction before anybody even knows, that something went wrong. And if you look at businesses, the best leaders, the best entrepreneurs, they can't say, like a comedian can't say, "Sorry, this isn't working. I need to go backstage and look at my notes." If they do that, the trust is over. But they are so well prepared. The best entrepreneurs, you think that they're got this natural gift. Maybe they're charismatic, maybe they're smart, maybe they're great talkers, maybe they are natural leaders. But they are so well prepared. Nothing there is faked. If they're good entrepreneurs, there's no faking it. good comedians, they might have a sense of humor, but they don't just stand up there and make people laugh. You know, Rio taught me some crazy things. And he said, you know, he said to me, that kind of craziness, it's practice and practice and practice, like even remembering which pocket I put them in. You know, it's the first time I ever pulled out cards in a talk. But if there was ever a message to leave off on, is that the best entrepreneurs and the best comedians, they're listening as much as they are talking. So thanks very much, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the talk.